Nkutha, good afternoon.
Mr.
How are you,
Mampuba,
sir?
how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for making time to speak to us as Ata Capital on our blog with interacting with our trustees. Particularly today, the topic that I want us to cover is around Regulation 28. Mr. Nkutha is the Deputy Principal Officer of the UCT Retirement Fund, and my name is Maredi Mampuru. I'm the Head of Client Relations at Ata Capital, and we'll be engaging around the Regulation 28. Mr. Nkutha, thank you again.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
Let's jump straight into it. What are your thoughts on the asset allocation as per the Regulation 28 of the Pension Funds Act, particularly in relation to unlisted assets?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It's well welcomed, these changes because of where this particular asset class has been previously. I think it was one of those asset classes that the regulator didn't really pay too much attention to, and the benefits that come with this. And having, for instance, private debt increased to 15% as unlisted debt, as well as private equity having an aggregate of 15%, it gives us as board of trustees much more leeway to consider and actually diversify more outside of the listed space. So it has been very positive, and it shows that in terms of diversification and the level of returns that as long-term investors, it would be in good standing for our members, as it has a huge impact when it comes to ESG principles, and specifically when you look at the social aspect and looking at where our country is in this particular juncture. High unemployment rate, high interest rates, so things aren't that good in terms of the outlook, but I believe that this particular asset class has the opportunity or underlying opportunities of job creation and alleviating poverty in our country.
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you for clarifying the issue, particularly around the asset allocation aspect, which is quite an important aspect for pension funds when they're considering diversification, as you put it, which leads me to my next question, where we've noticed that most pension funds have not taken advantage of these maximums that are available to them in terms of unlisted assets, with regards to the amendment, as you put it, with the changes that the regulator has introduced. What do you think is the case? Why do pension funds not take advantage of the opportunity to invest in these unlisted assets?
I think I'll be blunt and say that training and being aware of this asset class, because you don't know what you don't know. And if asset consultants that are employed to provide professional services in terms of advisory and giving trustees options, then they won't know if that this actually exists. So I think training is much more it's pivotal in terms of understanding the asset class and reducing complexities associated with the asset class. There are a lot of complex terms such as equalization, which can overwhelm trustees. Fees are understandably high, but lowering them over time would definitely help. Another issue that we've identified is that there's a lot of private equity firms. So we need to basically have some consolidation happen and have firms that would basically collaborate, as opposed to, because they're offering similar investment strategies, as opposed to being a single manager, but they could consolidate. So there's a lot of those in the market, and it does get overwhelming for trustees, especially when it comes to decision making, because you might like the offering, but it's copy and paste from another firm, and it does cloud your judgment when you have to make those decisions of appointing and looking at certain themes, because funds will have themes of what they want to achieve as part of their social responsible investments. So that's where I think education is pivotal, and SEFCA has done a great job, but I think there's also collaboration opportunities between BATSITA, PLA, as well as IRFA to engage with trustees and understand this asset class and make it as lay as possible. Because I work for a university fund, but we also struggle. So it has nothing to do with which sector you are involved in, but it's just general jargon that is outside of our domain because we've been overly exposed to listed markets and we understand that space as opposed to the unlisted. Another thing that we've identified when we did an appointment recently is the level of complexity when it comes to the legals and reviewing of DOAs. It's a lot of work. A lot of legal minds need to be brought to the table, and it's expensive because now we have to outsource the service because, our asset consultant is not going to be comfortable making the decision and saying the DOAs are fine with them, but they need a second legal opinion. So we've gone through like 2 legal opinions just to make 200 million commitment. So it is time consuming, and I think as industry we need to streamline these legals and make it easier for trustees to understand and implement commitments and not miss deadlines, because now we're chasing a deadline of closure. So those things need to be brought to the table, and the penalties and implications of missing these closures. So I think education and training is of utmost importance.
No, thank you for that, William. I think a few gems that you have pointed out, which I suppose for guys like ourselves in the private equity space, we do take that feedback and we try as much as possible to be quite engaged. It is not a regular or easy everyday investment asset class, particularly around the legals. I mean, it is quite an onerous process. We go through the same thing with our clients. What we tend to do in that space is we don't leave. Obviously, as a client, you need to make your own decisions and you need to have an understanding of the legals from your own point of view. However, part of the service that comes with investing with us is we give you exposure to the legal firms that we use to help you understand the legals a lot better, as opposed to yourselves going to engage with other firms. However, every client deals with matters in the way that they do. But the feedback is appreciated and it makes sense. There's a lot of training that needs to go into the space and a lot more engagement. And also the collaboration thing is something that we all think about, but at the same time, it also gives you an opportunity to have a wider choice as opposed to being limited to 1 or 2. But the feedback is welcomed. Now, if we bring it closer to your own pension fund, as a fund, what has been your view, although you've shared a little bit in terms of what you've invested in, but globally, what has been your view with regards to unlisted in the unlisted space, but also having done that investment that you've done now? Do you see that as something that is going to continue to further invest in this space? And I guess given the size of your assets also to determine how much you can go into that space.
Yeah, I think obviously because it's as first-time investors in this asset class, we are now being enlightened, and with Regulation 28 allowing us to have much more exposure with different types of for instance, PE and debt instruments. So we chose to go with the infrastructure because of particularly what our members want. Is we surveyed them and they came back and say major issues that they were facing is unemployment, corruption, and climate change. And we then aligned our investment strategy to speak to those themes, which spoke to infrastructure equity. So this was our first investment. And I think looking at, from a bird's eye view, is that there's much more potential, especially when it comes from an impact perspective, because you always want to have impact. And I think in the second tranche, because we did apply a certain dry powder, and we've put away certain assets that we will allocate or make commitments to this particular asset class in our second round. So we look at themes because it's important, because you need to have an objective and say, okay, we're investing in this asset class because of the following reasons. And part of our report back that we give to our members annually is that we would produce an SRI report showing that what the fund has been doing with their assets. So we would like to have a very interesting type of alternative investment strategy after this particular one. These things do take time, and obviously we are inundated with other things outside of just the investment strategies. But I mean, with the legislative changes that are coming next year, it is going to put a lot of it's going to be onerous on our board. But definitely the appetite is there, and I know that our investment consultant is really likes this as a class. And I mean, he introduced us to it and executed it within 2 years, and I know that you and I have been, you've invited me to SAFCA several times, more than 4 years ago, and you've introduced me to this asset class, but only now have we made a decision because of the consultant showing us and being keen on educating and upskilling us as a board to ensure that we invest in this asset class. So there's definitely appetite for more.
Yeah, and congratulations for taking that leap of faith. I think that's very positive, and hopefully other pension funds follow suit, particularly with the opportunities that they have get provided by Regulation 28, that it affords them the opportunity to invest in the various asset classes within the unlisted space. And you guys have taken the opportunity to invest in infrastructure. Now, lastly, there's always concerns about liquidity, and my view around liquidity is you take the whole fund's investment strategy into account, and it's been an issue for some people to say, oh, if we invested in this asset class, should we decide to change our minds, or should we decide to change direction due to changes in our investment strategy? There's an issue of liquidity. How has the fund taken the liquidity aspect into account when investing in this asset class?
Yeah, no, I think that was, for years, it has been one of those excuses that, no, it's a risky asset class. You're going to be locked in and there's liquidity risk. What if you've got a huge outflows when members want to leave and retire? But I think it came at an opportune time because we were restructuring our fund. So with the restructure, we made sure that we alleviate any liquidity risks. So in terms of liquidity risk, I know we spoke about cash flow management systems, and we saw that we overall, before our restructure, I think we didn't have hamstring of liquidity. Take into account that we only allocated or made a commitment of 2.5% currently. And looking at, I mean, the outlook is we don't really foresee liquidity risk that would expose us to such an extent that we don't have to invest in this asset class, even if we maximized the Reg 28 limits. So for us, there's no liquidity risk. Our investment strategy is structured in such a way that the fund is liquid to pay our claims should the need arise, and ensure that we meet our objectives as a fund when it comes to paying certain withdrawals, death claim, whatever, retirements, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Mr. Nkutha, thanks for that. I think that demystifies the issue around liquidity. Like I said, to me, I see it as a broader fund strategy. And congratulations again for taking the opportunity to invest in the asset class, and hopefully it yields the returns even in turbulent markets globally, as if you've seen that markets have been quite under pressure in the past couple of months, and it's expected to carry on for some time to come. It's going to be quite a rough ride, and hopefully over the years, remember, this investment is at least over a 7 to 10 year period. And in the short term, you're not that you're not worried, but you're hoping that the results of the strategy that has been put in place does yield results. And I wish you and your fund well in this alternative journey. And thank you for engaging with us with our engagement with trustees as Arthur Capital.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Mampu, and wishing Arthur Capital all the best. I hope there's a lot of pipelines in terms of projects and commitments coming from the retirement space as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the well wishes.
Okay, take care, my guy.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.